Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I'm your host, DBJ. You won't not be seeing my face, but instead, we will be taking a look and hearing the dulcet sounds of Brandon Sanderson, who has an old lecture series still available on YouTube, and we are going to discuss um, his three laws of magic. There's actually a fourth one, the zeroth law, but I thought, having seen this before and having been a part of and heard other people's discussion about it, I thought we would go back in time and, with Brandon Sanderson's newfound popularity in the tabletop role playing world, a community, I thought we would go back, take a look at it, see what these laws are about, have a discussion about it, play it, and see how it impacts game design itself, and understand that it's more than just he's known for creating magic systems, but to also go into does it extend further past magic itself, but in the way we interact with games and things of that nature. But I understand this went up a little bit late, so I'm gonna wait for you guys to come in. So let's get through the intro and then get into this video so we can have a big, open, wide discussion. Yeah, that's right. RPG with DBJ. That's here. This is a channel. Let's get into it. Let's play such for such purposes. Let's ensure that the volume is up high enough. Uh, Difficult to do these things when we are not live. Come on. Get the volume up just a little bit more. There we go. All right. First law of magic. And the link to this is from Camera Panda. It's down in the doobly-doo. And this was 8 years ago. So let's hear what he's got to say. And we'll go back if anybody would like me to go back to bits and pieces of this lecture. We're just going to focus on 3, maybe 4 aspects of it. I think it's a 10-hour lecture series, 10 or 12 hours, and this just happens to be one of them. I think this is the 8th lecture in his sci-fi fantasy novelization series.
Sanderson's first law is the most complex of them, and it just says, and I'm going to try and write this out. I'll try and write it out so you can actually read it. We'll see how this goes. Your ability, meaning me, these are all laws I kind of wrote to myself, to solve problems.
Okay.
With magic in a satisfying way. This one gets an underline. Okay. Is directly proportional.
Yeah, sounds like me.
To how well the reader understands said magic. All
right, so his first law. Hey! Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is 6 a.m. ish on this side of the pond, and his first law of magic is your ability to solve problems in a satisfying way is proportional to your understanding of said magic. Now, in the novelization, what he's referring to, and of course he's using the word, that of course, maybe you don't understand this, that magic doesn't necessarily mean fantasy magic. It means the extraordinary, the non mundane abilities that normal human beings do not have, that in your world or setting or whatever need the people who are consuming your product need to understand what that means. So magic could be cybernetics, magic could be alien mutations or post-apocalyptic technologies or psychic powers or the powers of ghosts and curses and um, animals or whatever. Anything that is alien to our normal human understanding, you got to explain it within that. Listen, I hear you, and this is the place to escape it for just a moment because that's not going anywhere. And to be honest with you, it's the way the democratic voting system works. Um, in many ways, you're not going to get an answer yet. There are certain states count votes um, early voting and ballot voting after and things like that. So yeah, they'll do a lot of predictions because mathematically, after if there's certain electoral colleges that have a propensity for one side or the other. So yeah, yeah, yeah. It ain't going nowhere. It's not going anywhere. This is where we go to escape. If we had a political channel, hint, 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 then maybe it'd be kind of cool to do that though. But there, I hear you, Drew. I hear you, and you're across the pond. You think we ain't stressed over here? What I'm worried about is the violence. Yeah, I didn't say don't worry, just not right now. Um, I'm afraid our the sycophants and the zealots and the fanatics who have turned their politics into religion may engage in wanton destruction on a social and economic and physical level, and I'm afraid of that. That's what I'm afraid of. This is why we're going to use fantasy and magic to at least temporarily escape and open our minds to other modes and ways of thinking. Um, so hard seg, screech. So to solve an issue in fantasy writing and in science fiction and things of that nature, when you have skills and abilities that go far above and beyond what normal human beings can do, you have to explain it a bit. And a lot of times in television and movies, graphic novels, things like that, you can use the term show don't tell. So you can show someone touching their temple with their fingers and closing their eyes, and then you have a voiceover. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, I hear you. Don't act like I don't understand you. Uh, and but then we'll get a voiceover of them getting maybe like a soundscape of them reading someone's mind, and then we go, oh well, whenever the character closes their eyes and touches their temple, they're reading someone's mind, and that's an explanation of how they do it. um, and so in role-playing games, we need an explanation of how the magic works. Now this could be, like I said, it could be fantasy magic, casting spells and reading people's minds and summoning fireballs and things like that, but it also includes technological things as well, whether it's like cybernetic and robots and whatnot, and having the rules have a way for us to explain it. Now Vancian magic, classic D20 F20 magic, is some of the most explained magic systems we have in tabletop role playing games. Meaning, like, we know that this spell has this distance, covers this area, or this many targets, or a single target. We understand what the saving throw is. We have dice for damage if there is any, or saving throw. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And we know that how the rules work. There are fuzzy magic systems. Mage the Ascension, Ars Magica, even Cool Name Goes Here, which I'm working on, has a bit of a fuzzy magic system. And when I say fuzzy, it there are no hard and fast rules about each particular magic spell. Instead, you construct a spell through using dials to have an outcome of that spell. So, for example, I want to create fire. Okay, that's one aspect of it. What is the range? Is it touch? Instead of making it far range and throw it, I'm going to make it touch so my hand catches on fire. And then I want to burn this person and touch them. So it may be easier to cast that spell than it would be to throw a fireball, which would have both range and area effect, in which we would have to turn those dials. Some players, and that why those magic systems haven't expanded is because of that particular effect. It's not that those are bad magic systems. It is the solving problems in a satisfying way and explaining how those rules work and the explanation of those rules. Ars Magica does a verb noun system. So the verb can be something, and I'm pulling this out of my ass. I know I don't have the game. Although there's a successful Kickstarter to put it into the Creative Commons, not Creative Commons, open license. So there's going to be an OGL SRD, so I can't wait for that. But it uses a verb noun system. A verb noun meaning like control, destroy, uh, inflate or increase or enlarge or decrease, uh, study thing. So you pick a verb, then they have a list of them. They're actually in Latin, and then you pick a noun. So it could be like, let's say you want to have create. So you might be a specialist on creating and destroying, and then you pick a noun, and a noun could be like earth, air, fire, water, mind, metal, plants, dreams, whatever, and things like that. And then you combine the two. So you may be able to create dreams, but if you don't have destroy as one of your verbs, you can't take the dream away, but you could create dreams in someone's head or create illusions or something like that. So let's listen a little bit further into what he has to say, and see if he goes into a little bit more detail and analyze that detail.
All right, so there's a couple things going on with this rule. Now, as I said, the your in this is me, and that's kind of legible. That's good for me. The your is me. These are not necessary laws that I think everyone needs to follow, because rule number 1 of this class and writing instruction is try it out. If it works for you, keep using it. If it doesn't work for you, throw it away. Most likely, you will adapt it to your own needs, and then it will become a tool that is useful for you.
So his point about use it, and if not, throw it out, is a perfect example in terms of a game design in our tabletop role-playing community, that sometimes these rules are laws or whatever. We all know there's exceptions to them, and depending on the kind of game you want to run or play, it's like that. One of the most most legendary fuzzy magic systems came in the form of Mage the Ascension from White Wolf Games, the original first edition, and it had a magic system where you had like 9 schools of magic in it. It was like matter, energy, mind, spirit, something. It was, I can't remember, co-location or distance or something like that. And then you had dots in it, and they had like 5 dots, and it was like, well, if I have 1 dot in life, how is that different than 4 dots in life? And it was very it was very, very vague. And you did have another skill called arete, and arete was like your ability to use the magic. So you had a skill, and then you had how deep or how expansive your magic was. The first level allowed you, and imagine it on a human body, right? So your first level, you could see the magic, you could perceive it, and then the second level, it's like it affected yourself, and then on dot 3, you could affect others basically by touching them or being in their presence, and then 4 was like you could use it at range, and 5 was extremely legendary, like you could even aim at things that you couldn't see. And that was basically the rules. And you're like, wait, so how many dice do I grab? So wait, how does this work again? It was very fuzzy. Now, mind you, they did have, I guess you could say, pre-prescribed spells in that magic system, but it it went pretty fuzzy. And with reality bending mages in that White Wolf game system, there were ways, and there was paradox and things like that, but it was pretty fuzzy. So I think in game design, when it comes to um, your ability to solve problems, that's one part of it, in a satisfying way, and saying it's directly proportional to how people understand the system. It's having rules for your game or game system, or finding a game that has pretty good rules for it. And the hardest part, I think, in this is the consideration you underline, which is in a satisfying way. And I use the term the easy button, right? So what I don't like is correspondence. Thank you, Drew. I knew somebody knew it. Thank you. Um, the satisfying way portion of this is to each person's particular taste. Meaning, like, there's in ye olden days, there was a spell called knock, and the knock spell was you could literally knock on something and open up a lock. So if it was locked, you had the knock spell, you could unlock something. And not very dramatic, not a lot of fanfare, but it gave you the ability to do it. Is it satisfying? To some people, they would say, it's kind of an easy button. If I have this thing written on my character sheet, I instantly solve this problem. Others would say, for example, in the new Knave Second Edition from Questing Beast, Ben Milton, in Knave Second Edition, he has like 100 spells plus ability to create tens of thousands of other spells, and in that creation, none of it is explicit. It is like, oh, you have the ability to touch an object and make it weightless. Oh, okay. So how does that solve a problem? And his magic system, or his desire, is players will then have to come up with a method of, okay, I have the ability to touch one object and make that object weightless. How can I use that ability in a satisfying way to solve another problem? And it's like, oh, if I touch I don't know, a backpack, can we put the lightest weight member on that backpack and push them across the floor and make them levitate across the floor so that they don't set off the traps or something? Maybe that's a way to do it. Maybe there's a way to lift a very dangerous or ancient artifact off of a pedestal without actually engaging with it. So I'm going to make it weightless and have it just float slowly off of the pedestal to see what's underneath it or something. And that is where satisfaction, I feel, comes with, like, you're taking the square peg and figuring out how to get it into the round hole. Drew says, personally, I prefer soft magic, and for my own system, I designed the most soft system I have ever seen. I liked it. And I mean, not just fuzzy like Mage, but that the magic remains so soft it does not lose any of its all. That's something that gets lost in a lot of this creativity. Yeah, it's a lot. And okay, well, I wasn't going to do the soft hard magic thing, but we'll go over through that. So let's fast forward. Is this it? That's not the second. This is the second law, and then I think this is hard, soft system here, right here.
It's kind of the doozy of the laws, but it's been very helpful for me in a storytelling set. So let's jump to Sanderson's second law.
Oh, nope. That's the second law. Sorry. Come on, where it shows up. Come on, let it show up, because I can't remember where it was. I didn't write it down in the notes. There we go. All right, let's go back just a little bit.
Readable. This does not mean that the magic has scientific origins, okay? Most superhero stories are extremely rule-based hard magic systems, particularly these days. Even though the fact that they have powers in the first place makes absolutely no sense. We have the X gene, And the X gene, for some reason, creates a different ability in everybody who has it, turns some into frogs, and it makes other ones able to turn into ice and shoot ice from their hands. I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
This is not a very scientific magic system, but it is a very hard magic system, particularly in the films.
You say it's repeatable and what?
It's repeatable and dependable. You know what's going to happen with it, right?
This is one of the repeatable, dependable part of this is where, like, classic Dungeons and Dragons and all of its derivatives, that it makes us think of that magic system as being like a science, like predictable, where because we even use this in our own sarcasm, where we're like, well, if they could just replicate Goodberry, they would never have to grow crops, or we could just have cure light wounds factories and solve everybody's problems, or things like that. And there's no mystery, there's no, like Drew's point about, there's no awe, there's no danger in eliciting the thing. Hey, I've got a spell slot, spell always works in this range, at this intensity, at this level, and there, it's like it's, instead of being scared of harnessing lightning, it's like flipping on a light switch, right? Changing a light bulb, and not much more detail than that. But let's see if he goes into soft systems.
Yeah, if you say, for instance, now, comic books aren't always the best at this. Particularly Silver Age. But they're just like, oh, he needs a new power. Okay, he has a new power now. That happened a lot. But what I'm talking about, this idea of Nightcrawler can teleport, and it does this, and it's repeatable, and every time it kind of has the same effect, and then he uses it to do lots of cool different things. That is a rule-based magic system, okay? And then you can play off that as a writer by making the things that he does exciting. You're like, oh, one of in X-Men, I believe it's 2, where we have Nightcrawler's main character. He says, I can teleport to places I can't see, but I'm scared of doing it. So what it does is it sets up a rule, it sets up kind of a limitation of that magic, and then it sets up a character moment for him where later on, when he teleports to save someone in a place he can't see, that's very hard for him, but he's capable of doing it, so he overcomes his character limitation at the same time that he develops more ability in his magic. And it doesn't feel like a Deus Ex Machina. He didn't manifest a new power. The rules were explained to us, and then the story manipulated those rules in a way that was satisfying. Okay? Questions about Sanderson's first law? It's kind of the doozy of the laws.
Come on.
But it's been very helpful for me in a storytelling set. So let's jump to Sanderson's second law.
It says soft magic.
So.
You seen it in okay. I swear it said soft magic. See, hard and soft magic systems. It says it right there.
Origins, okay? Most superhero stories are extremely rule.
Sorry about that, guys. Either it's incorrect or I skipped over it or something like that. So we'll just go into the second law and go from there. Sorry about that. Maybe it's in between. So we'll just go.
Laws are more interesting.
We gotta go back a little bit. All right, so the second law.
These are they get a little easier. Sanderson's second law is much simpler. It's the idea that flaws are more interesting than powers. WERS.
I think this is the biggest one, and I think this is just in my personal opinion, the one that most easily bridges the gap between mysticism and mystery and danger and it allows us to bend and move and flex our hard systems to try to move a game system that has rules to it into these softer elements. Drew says the three laws are rather hard magic. I think he also talks at some point about soft magic, but that is not what he's doing. You're exactly right, and it's it's in the lecture, but it says it is, but I didn't see it. His comparison, but he does talk about soft magic, I know this 12-hour lecture. There is another lecture where he talks about maybe we'll not today, but I'll find it and then we will talk about soft magic systems. But this second law, that the flaws are more interesting than the powers themselves, I think as a game designer, and finding a game that you like and your interaction with it is I feel like that's the dial or the presence of being able to turn things from wild and unpredictable and mysterious and dangerous and horrific and dreamlike and special versus I pressed a button and solved the issue. The simplest way we see this is with wild magic systems. So someone does a thing like I blast lightning out of the palm of my hand. Okay, we understand that that's the predictable part. You press the button, the lightning comes out of your hand, but the side effect of that thing is wild. We don't know what the side effect will be. Will you go blind? Will you turn into a goat? Will there be a potted plant that appears on top of your head? Will you get a purple beard? Now, personally, that stuff, I haven't used the word gonzo in a while. I personally don't like it going so ridiculous and comedic as a wild magic system. But that is one method of doing it. Hey, yes, you get to do the thing, but then there's this other side effect and you don't get to decide what that side effect is. That's a very easy, simple, dip your toe into the magic is still unpredictable and wild and we need to be careful aspect of it. Another flaw is more interesting than powers. Second law is when I use my power, I suffer a loss, meaning like my vitality, my endurance, I suffer fatigue. You have a numerical value that goes down. Maybe it's random, or maybe it's in ratio to your skill. So you roll the dice, and you roll the dice, and you roll 2 points under what you needed. Okay, well, the spell goes off, but those 2 points you rolled under what you needed subtract from, I don't know, your mana pool or your prana rating or whatever the case might be. And maybe, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, what does gonzo even mean in RPGs? Deliberately ridiculous? Yeah, deliberately ridiculous is a good example. Yeah, can you think of any famous examples? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wild magic system. DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, has, I think, for nearly every single spell, there is a table that you roll on, and depending on how wild you go outside of your capability, something else can happen. Now, I think in DCC, the randomness is constrained to what you tried to do. So if you try to control the mind of the ogre, the wildness is only related to your mental intrusion with the ogre. So maybe you pick the wrong target, or temporarily your thoughts are being read by everyone around you, or not only do you control the ogre, but one of your party members also falls under your spell. So it's constrained. In even in 5th edition, they have a wild magic table that's pretty like it. It's supposed to cover every aspect, but I mean, come on. Hey, you grow a beard of purple feathers, or like you turn into a potted plant or a goat. That's it not only is it comedic and tongue, it almost makes it seem uh, like you're purposefully trying to find reasons to make fun of that character who's playing that, or that character, that player wants to disrupt the game in such a way that it can disrupt the thematic elements of what's going on and the mood. And I don't like that. I would prefer a wild magic system constrained to the magic being possible, but there's also other flaws and limitations. And I brought up before, what was it, Monday, I brought up the fact that we in the community sometimes we will optimize the fun out of the game, and that's where players try to find loopholes and exploits and combinations so that they don't have any limitations. But the limitation of magic, there's one limitation that we pretty much ignore, that has been in fantasy, classic fantasy, forever, and that's VSM, verbal, somatic, and material components. That technically is a limitation of the magic system. Hey, if you don't have a magical focus, if you don't verbalize your magic, you have to speak aloud. If you cannot move your hands and body in a specific manner, if you don't have the bat guano or the pearl or the diamond or the powdered copper or the whatever eye of newt, then the magic, you can't do the magic. And I've often brought up the fact that when players are climbing a great cliff, well, how the hell did the magic user hold on to the rope, plus a magical focus, plus the material components, plus do the somatic part of it? And for the most part, people ignore it. And I feel like even embracing that part of it, which is embraced in Cool Name RPG, that hey, for each of these things you don't have, the difficulty of you casting that spell goes up by 1. And I like the idea of mixing and matching that. But there's other ways we can have flaws with magic and such. For example, the breadth and scope of your power. So let's say you are a pyromancer and you can only summon your magic. And Brandon Sanderson has done this in his books. I haven't read the books, mind you. This is only my study of the Cosmere and Stormlight and Mistborn and whatnot. That, for example, let's say your power is only available in the presence of fire. Then that would be a flaw in the magic system. That, well, to control this person's mind, you need a open flame. Well, are you near an open flame? Are you going to create an open flame? Are you going to make circumstances lead to the fact that an open flame is near you? So on and so forth. One of his magic systems deals with alumancy, which is like alloys and aluminum and metals, and that a character wants to ascend get over a wall or get up to a high window, and so drops a coin on the ground and presses against the coin with their magic, and because the coin can't go down into the cobblestone or whatever, they get launched away from the coin, launching them into the air up to the window to solve the problem. And I feel like we could coach. I was going to say train. That's pretty terrible wording, but yeah, we can train our players to say, hey, listen, the magic can't solve everything. You can't press a button and solve the problem. But what you can do is embrace the limitation of your character. Hey, I can control minds. I can get into people's dreams. I can unlock doors. I can float and levitate and all, but my power is limited to open flame and fire. So how do I accomplish this without anyone seeing me? How do I accomplish this by guiding my enemy into the room that's got the open hearth with the fire in it, even though we're standing in the hall? And for me, those limitations those constraints are where the real creativity comes from. And creative people understand this, right? It's the blank canvas problem. You give a big white canvas, give somebody 500 colors and say, go paint something. That's more horrible than giving them 3 colors and say, you must paint a cityscape that has 3 people in it, right? And then they go, oh, okay, All right, which colors do I have? You've got green, brown, and gold. Okay, I've only got these colors. I need to make a cityscape, and I have to have 3 people in it. Great, and then they go at it hard because the constraining is kind of squeezes the creativity out. I like that. Alley-oop says the way that hard magic doesn't seem to have no limitations nor consequences. Yeah, while soft magic has consequences, feels weird. It should be the other way. The way it sounds, I agree with you. And now sometimes soft magic is like we don't know what it can do, or we are unaware of the complete extent of what it can have as well. Yeah, Haliopia says the spell components are used by me to deal with rules lawyers. Okay, you want to use that spell like this? Please tell me the spell components you use and the correct sentence for the spell you will cast. I don't know if I go that far, but I will say, like, hey, you want to verbalize a thing? You might not be able to do it when in a burning building because there's smoke. You want to verbalize a spell? You're gonna and you're hiding. You're gonna let people know that you're standing back there. Hey, you want side diversion. We ran a game where the players had to collect spell components, and instead of picking a list of spells, what the players collected gave them access to other spells in the game. So if someone, I don't know, was able to get the hair off the neck of a giant, then we picked like 3 to 5 spells they could cast because they had the hair from the neck of a giant. And we actually kind of ignored the spell levels, and we allowed the person to flip through the book and go, spell a giant. Would that give me giant strength? Well, yeah, that's included. And they were like, well, how about healing? And we were like, yeah, you probably could get a healing spell, like it makes you strong, when you're weaker, it makes you stronger or something temporarily. And then somebody else was like, well, how about a polymorph where you could polymorph into that giant? Like you could grow to a huge size. I'm like, well, isn't that the enlarged spell? Like, well, how about both of them? Yeah, we did that. And we kind of did like a pass-fail system in it. But I do agree about the limitations. Let's see if he's got anything more to say about this.
That pen doesn't work real well, so we're going to hide it over there. Flaws are more interesting than the powers themselves. This is, again, a kind of core storytelling concept. Your story is generally going to revolve around what your characters have trouble doing, around what the magic can't do, rather than what it can. This might seem counterintuitive. You're like, I've developed this cool magic system, and now you're telling me I'm going to write a story about what it can't do. But the same goes for characters. If you're developing a good character, they're going to be interesting. They're going to be good at some things. Then you're going to create a story that tests them in ways they are not prepared for.
So, of course, he's talking about novelization, right? You're making a character, you're writing a novel, you want to give your character special abilities, and then you want to challenge them. But I think the same applies to game design and role-playing games. And I think sometimes far too often we have players that forget that they're supposed to be challenged. When they think, well, I'm designing a character who doesn't have these issues, but the game is supposed to challenge you in what you can and can't do. Sometimes those challenges are internal, intrinsic, meaning like you're fighting against your own fears, your own guilt, your own paranoias, your own lack of skill. Sometimes they're external or extrinsic, meaning like how do we get over top of the chasm? How do we bypass the guards? How do we unlock the puzzle? How do we get from across the leagues of dangerous location and then those things can become mixed and matched, right? Maybe the characters are thrown into a situation where, hey, we're being besieged by the enemy, and oh, by the way, my internal fear gets triggered, so now I have to figure out how to overcome my fear. And we see this in a lot of indie games. Powered by the Apocalypse does this, has embraced this completely. There are other games where the game is set up that you want your character to have obstacles in front of them and then overcome those obstacles to achieve a goal. And that can seem counterintuitive to, well, all I really want to do is press my magic and destroy the enemy. Why would I specifically want my character to cower in fear behind cover when all I want to do is jump up and blast the enemy? And a lot of indie games say, no, on your character sheet you wrote down traumatic background on your character, and if this is the moment where your traumatic experience comes up vividly in your mind, causing you to not engage in what's going on. So now you have to figure out, okay, do I have the strength to overcome my fear so that my very powerful magics can solve the issue? The magic we know is going to solve the thing. I'm going to blast all the enemies and stop them. But the challenge isn't the enemy. Maybe the challenge is in yourself. And explaining that and having a game system that embraces that. Whereas in current fantasy, there are no consequences. I stand up and blast the enemy. There's no chance it's going to set fire to anything. There's no chance I'm going to be overcome with fatigue because I blasted all the power. There's no magical enemies that will sense my location and be drawn to me by triangulating, where every time I tap into the ley lines or the weave of magic, it alerts the enemy. There's none of that, and I think that's the best part of true magic and magic systems. But we're gonna let them cook a little bit more, and then we'll go to the third law.
The story is about what they can't do or what is hard for them to do, rather than about what they can do. The things that they can do will definitely be an aspect of this story and will be a fun part of it. But the story is about overcoming flaws, limitations. A good example of this, again, something a lot of people are familiar with, is Superman. Right?
Yes.
Anyone, what does Superman stories usually revolve around?
Kryptonite.
Kryptonite. Why?
Because they make the story interesting.
Yes. Here is this person who is basically deific and can do anything. Now we're going to introduce one of three things to a Superman story. One, the thing that takes away all his power, so he has to be like a normal person. Two, someone equally as powerful as he is. Or three, a woman. Right? Superman stories revolve around those three things. Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen some interesting Superman stories that revolve around introducing a situation that he can't fix with his power.
Right, that's the third situation. I made it jokingly as a woman. Really, it's usually him integrating to human society or trying to do relationship stuff or figure out a way, to achieve something that his powers just can't solve.
Again, a lot of indie games actually embrace this fact as well. I'm picking on Powered by the Apocalypse because it seems to be the ones that most is like we're cutting away the fat on the outside, and this is exactly what the game is about. Where in a way, Powered by the Apocalypse kind of says, guess what? We already know you're going to succeed. What we're interested in is how long and what obstacles you jumped over and around and navigated around to get to your success. And sometimes, instead of saying, oh, I stand up and blast the bad guys and the only reason it didn't work is because they're tough, sometimes it could be internal fears or there's a third element involved. And like he's talking about Superman, how Superman can be on the same team with a Batman character is because they will be a setup of a moral or ethical conundrum. Hey, do I help Lois Lane or do I save the people on the speeding train? And I've got to make a decision. How do I navigate both of those at the exact same time? We already know that if he makes a choice, he's going to succeed in doing one of those. He's going to save Lois. He's going to save the people in the speeding train, but separating the two. And we see this like a lot of superhero stories. Spider-Man, there's always some victim, usually a girlfriend or girl he likes, falling from a distance that he's got to go and, you hear my voice cracking, he's got to go and save them. It's like, oh no, Spider-Man, is he going to do it? That kind of thing. And then the bad guy's like, ha ha ha, I'm going to get away because I've distracted you. And it really, was that a failed skill roll or power roll, or did he not have enough points? Empowered by the Apocalypse, you roll 2d6. did you not roll high enough? You got a mixed result, right? It's those kind of aspects, and I think even if it's all external, it could be like, hey, I summoned my magic, but the elemental powers that grant me my powers show up, and they say, hey, you've been abusing it, or the fire that you need to summon in inside of you from in your soul, that to blast the bad guys, it's going to take you longer to summon it up because your tenuous connection with that power is not there, or something like that. And you could tell, I mean, of course, this could be numerical. You could roll dice to do this. You could have cards, or hey, listen, you can use your power 3 times. Four and after that, it's going to cost you. You need to come up with a cost. And in world, you can come up with different reasons. Hey, if you are a character of faith, it means that maybe you will be blinded by the light of goodness, or maybe there's a dark spirit that will invade your soul, and when you do this more and more and more, instead of generating light, you'll start creating darkness or whatever. There's all kinds of rules about that. He talks about Superman and whatnot. But
A problem that does not revolve around brute strength, or being able to fly, or being able to shoot lasers from your eyes, which are really interesting. That those are like the canon abilities Superman ended up with, because he had a ton of them way back when. I've mentioned the one where he once was able to shoot like little versions of himself from his hands. That one's real fun.
yeah, it was.
But yes, there are a lot of Superman stories that revolve around this. This is based, I use this as an archetype because it's easy to see, but Lord of the Rings is another good example. What can't Gandalf do? Destroy the ring on his own. We need a little hobbit to do it instead. The story revolves around something that's very hard. A very small person. In conceptually, what's the hardest thing for them? Well, you are very small from this little town you've never left before. You need to go across the entire map. We'll show you the map, right? You are the smallest person in the entire world, and you need to go from here over to here. And the Eagles can't take you because of reasons.
Oh, it's kind of funny too. Was it that I pick with the Lord of the Rings, especially the movies, where I'm just like, so Elrond could have kicked what's his face's ass into into where the ring was forged, and you didn't do it, and now all of a sudden you're like, we need to go across the ocean to the other side, and it's like, you you assholes, damn elven assholes. But anyway, I pick with that. We're going to get into the third law here. Yeah, old comics were hella wild. Dude, in old comics, the old Silver Age comics, they solved a ton of stuff by just going like, oh yeah, by the way, this person just happens to have a new power. It was very annoying because, like the television show Heroes, when you give that person the new power, those of us watching the show remember that, and you're like, wait a minute, did you just ignore the fact that they just did this other thing? Yeah, the price of power without flaws makes a boring character. I definitely agree. Yeah, Superman is strong, but where his powers can't help is interesting to tell. It's very difficult, too. It's very difficult to make Superman stories interesting because of that fact, because he doesn't really have a really good rogues gallery, and you have to, like, it makes boring movies, because then you're like, okay, well, if he can do anything and solve every problem, how do you challenge him? And then those challenges are like, okay, here's another chunk of kryptonite that just so happens to be found by somebody. Oh, here's another ethical issue that he can't shoot with his eye beams, and things like that. So it can be a little bit difficult, like, okay, how do we express the badassness of this character while at the same time challenging him? So my favorite moments I have in RPGs was I killed the party by using their flaws against them. Ooh. This power game is taught that flaws don't matter in Savage Worlds. You have the numbers in. Oh, I haven't played Savage Worlds in forever. Yeah. Why he didn't ask the Eagles had an in-world reason, as I know it. I think there is an in-world reason for some moment, but like in the movies, they never explain it. I get it. I know. But it is a little bit ridiculous. It's like, oh, great. You show up at the end and save me. Great. Thanks. Yeah, I see your Amon. It reminds me of the old show Knight Rider when Kit gets a new ability for one episode. Yep. Yeah, always had one. Kit, wow, Kit, you opened up the trunk and shot out a rocket. How come you never did this before? Yeah.
Let's go to Sanderson's third law.
Third law. Okay, okay.
And this is
Go deeper.
go deeper into a magic
Okay.
instead of wider.
All right, we'll pause it slightly right here because this goes on just a little bit, if I remember. So go deeper into magic instead of wider. Spoken Monday, I was talking about the dangerous spiral that we have in tabletop role playing games where we want more options. What he's saying is going deeper, not going wider. So an example would be delving into what the characters can already do, even if it feels limited. There's a movie that in a book series. I think I've got 3 or 4 of the books in the series. There was an author. There was a movie called Jumper. Sorry, I know I'm bouncing around. I believe the first book was called Reflex, but there was a movie called Jumper, a book called Reflex, a YouTube show that aired called, I believe it's called Impulse. And long story short, the young characters in the story, there were people who only had one power. They could transport themselves from one place to another. They could teleport. Teleport slash open a wormhole slash whatever. They could instantly go from one place to another. And it was the evolution of that ability. Is it just one person? Is this a historical thing? Are there enemies out there looking for people who can do these things? How is it controlled? Is it activated by aggression or fear, intense emotion? And then how large of an object can you use? What happens when you leave a place and then arrive somewhere else? Can you partially teleport one thing, like a person's arm, and take their arm but leave them somewhere else? It also had certain side effects where it would cause like electrical disruptions. It would do an implosion effect. I think at one point there was a young girl in the Impulse show where she was in a pickup truck and it imploded, it crushed in when she teleported somewhere else, and then she arrived with like the door of the pickup truck and a mirror or something that was in her bedroom or whatever. And it's like going deeper into those abilities. And mind you, with magic systems, he talks about how everyone wants him to keep creating more and more and more and more magic systems instead of going deeper into the magic that's already there. And I feel like in fantasy, we really haven't done that. Like, we haven't gone into how many different ways, unique ways could we do your classic fireball, because there's other fire spells. There's fire spells and heat metal and burning hands, and there's a jet of flame or something like that. But what about slowly heating something up? What about maintaining warmth when people are in a frigid climate? So on and so forth. And yeah, I think there are multiple books in the Jumper series. There's our graphic novels as well. I have a graphic novel, 3 books, novels, and I saw the YouTube series because I really like. And the movie Jumper wasn't the best thing in the world, but I thought it was like I created my own. We all suffer from world builder's disease on some level, and I created my own world in a world where the only modern day superpower at all was the ability to teleport, and that was it. And how you had like these enclaves of people who have always had these abilities, and corporations that want to gain these abilities, and criminal organizations that were using people who had these abilities and things. Yeah. Amon says, I tried to work out how writing works and interacts with magic, or how language interacts with that. Yeah. There's a game called Microscope where you can create a historical background for your world building. There's another one, I can't remember the name of it, that does the exact same thing with language, where you create a new language at the table amongst your players. And how words change meaning over time and things like that. And I can't remember the name of it. All right, let them cook a little bit more, and then we'll get out of here.
This one I started to kind of get a grasp on when I was trying to build the Stormlight Archive. And this is one that Hollywood has a lot of trouble with. This is the idea that a fewer number of things in a world building situation that are well explored will actually feel like a wider, cooler world than a large number of things explored very shallowly. Okay? So let me give some explanation of this. When I was developing the Stormlight Archive, people came to me and said, you had 3 magic systems in the Mistborn series. How many is your next book series going to have? And I started to get into this philosophy of, I'm going to have 20 magic systems in the next one. It's this sort of sequelitis, right? How many villains did you have in the first movie? 1. How many villains will you put in the second movie? Well, let's do 2. Third movie, let's do 7, right? It's the idea in Hollywood and in our own psychology that bigger is better.
Yeah.
But bigger can have multiple different meanings. And in this case, I find that a magic system that you have explored deeply in an interesting way is far superior to a large number of things. For instance, if you're building races for your book, having 2 races who have a really interesting relationship that you can dig into, who are fully expressed and you've spent a lot of time world building on them, will actually make the world feel larger than having 20 races that only have one gimmick to them each.
I feel a rant.
And are all really, really shallow.
Sorry, rant. Everybody, is it called dialect? I knew you knew. I knew it. Yeah. Yeah. Shai's like, teleport, the most insanely improbable magic trick, and that's the one you pick for your only power? Yeah, I know. My goal was that an inventor could build mechanical computers able to use magic. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, dialect is the name of it. Damn. I knew you would know it. I'm going to search for it. So the rant that I said that was coming on is, I'll give you a perfect example of this, all right? Fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, we have our historical Tolkien-esque races: human, elf, halfling, dwarf. Okay, so my question to most of you is, we have seen many games with elven empires, goblinoid, like orc, hobgoblin empires. We have human empires, elven empires, some dwarven empires. Beyond that, someone explain to me what a complete society with a history and everything well developed is of gnomes or halflings or tieflings or dragonborn. I'm not talking about special snowflakes. I'm talking about a fully realized nation of halflings. I want to know about their wars, their downslides, their upbringings, their foods and cultures, what makes each one different. Like right now, I've got a bunch of books stacked around me that have human empires of war and famine and darkness, and also of great triumphs and light and whatnot. I get it, because some of you are going to say, well, what about the cannibals, the cannibal halflings in Dark Sun or Eberron? And I'll say to you, okay, and right, like, we don't do that with elves. We got like 38 variations of elves, because they happen to, I don't know why there's a good reason why we like the elves, right? Because they seem like they're perfect people. We got all kinds of variations of elves, but tieflings, like, they're always portrayed as like one-off special snowflake characters. And it's like, I mean, how many different avian style races do we have? How many different feline styled races are there? And they're pretty just one note. not very interesting. We don't know about their languages and breeding and desires as a culture and what draws them towards and away from humanity, because most games have a very humanocentric uh, capability. But yeah, it's like what makes one, other than like hill dwarf, mountain dwarf, like what makes one dwarf different than another in a fully realized society? And you really don't see that at all. Yeah, I think many science fiction stories like Star Trek feel called out. Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Put on the makeup on their nose and ears. Get some spray, and you're done. Yep. But sadly, not many of the playable races have so little world building to them. Often it fits on a page at best. I agree. I agree. And it bothers me because if I'm a game master, dungeon master, storyteller, um, warden, keeper, flame tender, whatever, narrator, and a player wants to play one of them, my instinct is to incorporate those things. Hey, maybe your people are trying to call you back, but you are dedicated to the group you're traveling with. Maybe there are. I remember playing with a character who was playing a Fey-like person, and they were going through the seasons. Their character was going through the seasons. I know there is a elven-like race that has like seasonal changes and whatnot, and I was just like, thank you for adding something in here. I really appreciate it. And they were really into it. Like, my character's in their summer phase, and these are the things that they changed, and even their language has changed and whatnot, and their appearance, and I was like, yeah, thank you. Had a gnome kingdom on a island. They were banished there after they turned an emperor's hair pink and cursed his bloodline with it. Um now the gnomes you see mages constantly fight off pirates. That's wild. For a storyteller, that is extra work for fleshing out. I agree. Funny that in D&D books humans are mentioned to be highly adaptable, but elves have the most variation in them. Yeah, you ever notice that? Oh, give the humans that one versatility feat or whatever, but the elves, we're gonna have like seven different elves. You have sun elves, high elves, wood elves, dark elves. I don't know, blade elves. Whatever. I have a fallen halfling kingdom in my Verstan's setting. It is basically a realm that lies asleep, like in Sleeping Beauty. Ooh, that sounds dark, but I like it. I found it sad that my changeling had mentioned they have no culture at all. Yeah, elves are highly mutable. Yeah, but what about everybody else? Right? That's my point. It's not the elves are stupid. It's wow. There's a whole lot of attention for the mutations and stuff. Yeah, great. They have all these mutations, but what about everybody else? You know. Anyway, let him finish off cooking here. We're not going to the zeroth law. The zeroth law, the zero law that he mentions is do things that are awesome. That's basically what it is. He's like, listen, you want to see the awesome thing, put the awesome thing in your book or novel, and then go back to the other laws and explain how it got there, right?
Video games tend to have a problem with this. Large worlds. The big thing in video games right now, if you video game, is we're going to create procedurally generated worlds. We're going to do spaceship simulators where there are millions of planets you can visit, and each of them is as boring as the one before it, right? This is a big issue. Where being able to say there are 10,000 dungeons you can visit and every one of them is boring is not a very good game. What's that? Did you just joke? Yeah, it is so true. And that makes really cool marketing speak for the box. But once you visited the 3 archetypes of dungeons they come up with and realized that if they had just put in 10 dungeons that they'd spent a lot of time on, you would be excited to go to the next one and you would actually spend way more time in the game, will make a better story. The same thing's going to happen with you, with your magic. So instead of saying, I am going to develop a book where there are 30 different elements and I'm going to have different people using these different elements in really cool ways, you might want to ask yourself, wait a minute, can I back up? Can I take a couple of these magics I was planning, add some really interesting flaws and limitations, add some really interesting character ties in these magic to the people who are in the world? Can I make them opposed to each other? Can I make it so that they are tied to the economy, to the religion, to whatever all that stuff we brainstormed during the first world building thing? If I can tie these things all together to a couple of my magics, will I have a better experience for the reader? The answer is generally going to be yes. That's what's going to happen. So considering the ramifications of what you already have is worth doing instead of creating something new.
So, oops. Didn't mean to do that. Anyway, I wanted to let him cook on that. Thank you guys for showing this. No Man's Sky. Damn, that's the one that came up in my head about like that No Man's Sky died because it was like, oh, it was supposed to be this super expansive world where you would just fly to these different planets and regions and everything, and it was basically they basically had like one of my favorite random tables where it's like we've got 6 different colors, 7 different environments, 12 different hazards, and we're just going to mix and match them over and over and over again. And it's like, wait, isn't this? Didn't I see these elements the last time? Yeah, I heard No Man's Sky is like that. Yeah, for me, No Man's Sky was a really costly tech demo. Wow, burn. Droth Coulter explains in one sentence, I don't like elves and I like beer. That's funny. Yeah, No Man's Sky was a big one. So anyway, to sum up his last point about game design and world building and things like that, it's, for me, this is the necromancer question in role-playing games, right? Where a player it showed that the world generator works and done. Wait, aren't we supposed to have interesting interaction and depth? Nope, the world generator works and we could sell it to somebody else, right? Yeah. Oh goodness. Oh boy. Anyway, and thank you very much for popping over from Twitch. I tend to not thank people who are over there. But anyway, so this is the necromancer situation, my rant about necromancers in fantasy gaming. It's not that a player wants to play a necromancer and they want to do all these crazy things. It's, in a world with necromancers, how does that fit into the world, the society, the economics, the social and political ramifications of it? What happens when you are reanimating the dead? Are you drawing their spirits back from the worlds in which they came? What are the side effects of doing that? Will you be hounded by spirits who want to return to the living? Will you never have a night's rest because the spirits are always asking you to fulfill their desires? Will you hear the screams of the dying and whatnot? I found necromancy as evil sometimes is forced, in my opinion. Not necessarily forced. It's the outside world, right? Like most normal societies don't want you animating their passed away children and grandparents to use because you don't want to fall into the death trap in the dungeon, right? It's yes, for you think, well, all I'm doing is animating a body. It's not a big deal. Their spirit really isn't there. They're just a mechanical feature to you. But how does society look at it? In our own society, in our real world, for a very long time, even now, there are people who are specialists in dealing with the dead, and there were people who were untouchable because they dealt with the dead. And so many different cultures have different death rites that it is very much a taboo thing to go messing with other people's dead bodies for any reason. Even scientifically, they're just like, no, you need a law. You need to have a judgment by the law to exhume a dead body. You can't just carry around dead bodies the way you want to. It doesn't work that way. And so it becomes a societal thing. So it doesn't matter what your alignment of your character is. The rest of the world is going to look at you like you're evil or problematic, at a minimum problematic, in most places, unless the world is very dark, like a Morkborg type world, in which case you might be an asset to certain people, things like that. Yeah, summer mirror image on Twitch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and see, it's like I said, ghost summoning used to be a form of divination. Yeah, it sure is. I kind of still is, kind of Ouija boards and summoning mediums and things like that. Yep, so spirit summoning could be an advisor to speak on a murderer's case, which I've done many times. Um, Also, you know, but I think necromancy is not only the animation of dead. Exactly, reanimation, reviver from the school of necromancy as well. But what I mean is, in world building, it's not just, oh, I just want to play a necromancer and we're done. It's incorporating that into the world itself and going deeper into the magic rather than going wide and trying to come up with new spells and new things. Like, no, let's have some. Let's, that's where Eberron came from. Eberron was like, wait a minute, if all this stuff exists, instead of creating new things, what happens if these things become more populous, more to the common man? What happens if your average person can send a letter by paying a gargoyle to have it fly across the floating city, and I have a magical light spell that illuminates my work office in my den, and it's things like that, right? Uh, it's kind of cool, and that's where you go deeper into it instead of going broader and creating. We need 7 new subclasses and 5 new races and blah blah blah. I know they're not called races; they're called species, lineages, heritages, things like that. But you get my point. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Matter of fact, thank you very much over there at Twitch. For other people who are over there at Twitch, I'm going to hand you this. I hope you appreciated that. Yeah. No, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So, anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. If you like guitar riffs, I'm going to leave you with a guitar riff, and then we're going to get out of here. So, guys, thank you very much. Tomorrow is A5E Thursday, and it will be Level Up 5th edition. We'll do another character class and talk a little bit more about the game. Just me giving back, and there are people who are searching for this information, and it also gives me an excuse to like both promote something and then go like, because I always get squirrely, right? Get off on the side and go like, by the way, there are these other aspects of the game or how we operate in our spaces and whatnot. And I just appreciate being able to do that and having a voice for that, and having you guys have a voice for that as well. Oh yeah, and always with there we go. Happy halfway point to another fraction of eternity. Well, thank you very much for the Hump Day shout out. So guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a great day. See you later. Peace and tranquility.